You've triggered my trap card, the Magical Hats. In this series, myself and 3 of the top Yu-Gi-Oh! Streamers will give their unfiltered, uncensored, and uninformed takes on some of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s most pressing issues. The catch? One of these 4 has a fake take, and it's up to the rest to find the liar. It's time to play Magical Hats.
Easy.
And welcome back to Magical Hats episode 3. I hope everyone had a good time watching the last episode. I know I definitely remember what we talked about, but we are back once again. There's another sus imposter. How's everybody feeling?
I'm feeling good today, bud. Feeling great, Joseph.
What's our catch rate? I can't remember. Have we always caught the imposter?
I mean, the first episode there was none, and then the second I think Gage missed because you were the imposter.
Gauge throwing, man.
Well, this week we have a new sus imposter and a new question. This week we are going to be discussing, is Yu-Gi-Oh! Becoming too expensive? And we are going to begin with the one, the only... who do we usually begin with?
I think we begin with distant coder normally, and we just go down the line.
We are going to begin with Kevin. Fire it off.
So I'm in a really weird predicament, which, as you all know, I am currently banned from competitive play, so I can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Like at locals or regionals or even YCS or anything like that. I'm in a weird spot where, because I can't play competitively, I am not able to justify spending the amount that you have to be spending to play the game on a competitive level in order to play Yu-Gi-Oh! With my competitive friends. The only deck I own is Flu because I had it from ages ago. I think the game has gotten to a point where the amount of staples you need to play and how few and far between reprints are, it's too expensive and is completely unreasonable, especially for anyone new or casual trying to get into the competitive scene.
Nadir, you're up next.
I will say that the best way to think about it is that it's sort of like 2 camps. I think to fully optimize and maximize a competitive, full-fledged competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, it is obnoxiously expensive. You're gonna have to dish out for prosperities, for the droplets, blah blah blah, the usual kind of staples, the tier limit deck if you want to actually be able to compete this format. But I think that in fact, actually, there is in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! A huge sort of middle ground, but depending on the format and the decks you're targeting, there's plenty of budget options that replace that. Droplets for Chalice was a very popular budget option in earlier of last year, specifically for dealing with something like Mirror Jade, etc. So while completely optimizing your deck is going to cost you a pretty penny, there is a massively simpler middle ground. You can throw together 3 Dark World structure decks and probably play it at a decently competitive level at locals. I think there's lots of options for competitive play. So I think the game is getting more expensive at the higher level, but there are plenty of alternatives.
All right, I guess I'll fire it off. Not surprising. I think the answer is like a resounding yes. I think the game has become comically expensive. I really disagree with just about everything that Nadir just said. I'm going to be honest. The number one culprit, I think, in terms of like the game continuing to be super expensive is this weird thing that they're doing now with like lateral reprints. Take a staple that's prohibitively expensive because it's like a secret rare, and then they'll print it in like a side set at that set's highest rare with no other chase cards, so then it's still a ton of money. Like it's not a helpful reprint system like the way that the Megatins used to be. I think John Moore does a pretty good job of explaining this stuff on his channel. I really disagree that there is like a sub-tier level of playable deck that's inexpensive. Even bad decks play like Prosperity, even terrible archetypes need to shell out for like the hand trap lineup and evenly matched in the board and stuff like that. And I really disagree about the 3 structures thing. Like the difference between 3 Monarch structures was like, that was it. You didn't need a single additional card. If you buy 3 of the branded structure, you had to buy like the $45 Masquerade, the $55 Chimera, the $30 Supers that were randomly in the main sets. And finally, you can bring 3 Dark World structures to locals and do well is a scathing indictment of the EU local scene. Folks, remember, they're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In EU. They're playing something else. If you bring 3 Dark World structures to a local anywhere in North America, you will get bestialed for your life savings every round. I guarantee it.
Well, I mean, go figured I would have the dissenting opinion on this one, right?
Okay, this is why I picked this topic, is because I knew you would be a dumbass.
So I'll come out with the hot take, right? Like, I'm known for them, but I actually truly think players that are starting to play the game in the most recent years, I'd say even in the last like
half a decade don't realize how good they have it. Does anybody remember, you guys were all around from Breakers of Shadows release, right? When they changed how the boxes were compromised, we used to get 1 secret rare, 2 ultra rares, 4 supers, and then you got a rare in every pack. That's it. So if you consider it now, how we get 2 secrets per box, one thing important to note is that the amount of secret rares per set has only gone up by, I think, about 2. I want you guys to try to imagine going back to like Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy, when it was Dragon Ruler format, and you needed Draco Sack and Spellbook of Judgment to compete. You have 12 boxes in a case, 1 secret rare per box. You're lucky if you come out with 2 of the same secret rare. And those cards were $100, right? I think it's obscene how we have Paralino hit $100 because the ratios don't make too much sense. That being said, I think the Megatins have curbed the price of the game significantly. All the staple cards has been just pulverized in value. And it's not only because of the Megatins, but also you look at the most recent reprint set, Magnificent Mavens from last year. Probably one of the best reprint sets of all time that we've gotten. And it took them and it sliced them even farther in half. One of the big hurdles is like people always ask, what do I buy first? And it's not sexy, it's not appealing, but you gotta say you gotta buy the staples, right? You gotta get staple cards in your collection. And then from there, when you stem out to build any other deck, it actually, I think, is very affordable.
And you cannot actually believe that.
That's
like,
insane. I don't know.
You're out here. Well, you're out here talking about like the change that happened in Bosch. The pre-Bosch format was like the 2016 NAWCQ, where coders exactly on point. The top decks were like $100. You can't say like, oh, $100 Dracosack was prohibitively expensive. The entirety of Dragon Ruler during that format, it was like a $900 deck. Right now, a playset of Magnamut, a playset of Druisworm, and a playset of Sarnier runs you 100. 3 Pellorinos is 150. If you buy Tearlament from scratch, it is a $900 deck.
The one thing I will say is I'll agree that the true anomaly from this era that I can't even wrap my head around is super rares like Magnamut and Druisworm being somewhere near $10.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount.
I think we also need to ask, like, has the demand of the game just increased since then too? Imagine we have Breakers of Shadows printing in today's game. Nothing would be affordable. It would be impossible to get cards. The way we are now, the game's just gotten more popular, and I think those anomalies like Druisworm and Magnamut, they're hard for me to wrap my head around too. But as for everything else that's been printed in the game, it's the most accessible it has ever been in years.
So are you just saying Lamau inflation, we gotta go with it? Like
No, it's not. It's just like the game's more popular.
No, I think the important thing that Gage is saying is that we are in an anomalous period right now. We are in a literal tier 0 format. So naturally, there is a set deck list that people play with right now, and those are extremely expensive, right?
But it's not just that deck.
No, but if we're looking at modern Yu-Gi-Oh, we have to look at like maybe like the last like 5-ish years, I'd say. And I think overall, over the last 5 years, it's been pretty good. And Megatins extremely helped that.
While I agree that the Megatins have helped, I think one big issue with the Megatins is to just put so many cards in there that although it does bring some cards in at a lower rarity, it also, like, look at Dragoon. Dragoon was in the Megatins. I know it's not a reprint or anything like that. It was like the only set you could get it in. But with the sheer amount of Megatins being bought, Dragoon was still like an $80+ card.
Yeah, the problem was that they removed the promos. That's why, like,
that's fair.
Like cards like that. Joseph, why is it that you think like the mid-tier decks are way too expensive?
Yeah, I have 2 things. Firstly, I think you're absolutely right that like the past 5 years has had some affordable formats like the 2016 NAWCQ one. But I think if you look at formats from 2020 to now, it's almost an unbroken string of prohibitively expensive formats. Adamancipator was a $700 deck. Eldritch was $1,100 at one point. Spiral Extravagance was a $1,500 deck.
I will say, I think that one is a little bit unfair because that was just a deck.
That was a ridiculous.
It was a
deck,
ridiculous deck. Like that was not the deck everyone was bringing. That was like a Jesse deck.
No, Spiral was the only deck playable.
Spiral,
that
yes.
format.
Extrav Spiral was a whole other story. That's all I'm saying.
But then you've got what, like in the last couple of years, a 3x structure deck in Branded had a $600 price tag. Based from that format was $1,200. Like consistently, the best decks of like the last 3 years have been quadruple digits in money. If you go down further to like the bad decks, you know, you're talking about like decks that are still playing Prospy to account for the fact that they have consistency issues. Prospy's been reprinted. It's a $50 card. Maybe the cores are cheap, but the cores of everything are cheap except for like Pellerino and Sprite Blue.
So yeah, that's exactly what I just said though. Like you said even earlier, you said like a Tearlament deck minus the staples is $700, which I think that is just wildly incorrect too.
I mean, it's up there. I mean, it count. Do you count the Bestials as staples? Because if you do, then probably it's less than that.
And
But
I think,
it
and
is.
that's the thing. I think as Nadir said, we're an anomalic kind of period. Is that the right word or something like that? Where like the Bestials are mandatory to play if you want to keep up with like tier element, right? But I even think like it's the staples that are money, right? And I think like if we're considering the staples still being like the hurdle of the gameplay, it is just something people have to get over, man.
But that isn't. But that isn't the argument, though.
A counter argument I'll give here is the fact that, like, you look at something like Forbidden Droplet. Forbidden Droplet got printed, what, like 3 times as a secret, and then 1 time as, like, I think, like an ultra.
It was a
and
lateral reprint.
It's Forbidden Droplet.
Forbidden Droplet got printed, like, 4 times, and every time it got reprinted.
If you want the honest to God best example of the game being affordable, that's Forbidden Droplet. Forbidden Droplet's price has gotten pulverized for the multiple reprints it's gotten.
Now it has.
Wait. They shoved it in a set. Abyss from the Deep. That set is trash. That was the only reason to sell that set. They shoved these reprints into these different sets just to simply sell sets. That is unheard of. You go back a couple years, you weren't getting a reprint until the Megaton the next year.
If you put a reprint in a set that no one opens, the price of the card doesn't go that far down because no one opens the set.
Yeah, Droplet didn't go down that much at all.
Droplet's $25. That card was $200 at its peak.
It is now.
It's a 2.5-year-old card.
And it's still one of the best cards in the game.
And it's still $60 for a playset.
It's still what? Whoa!
But the point here's the thing though. This is the main point I wanted to make though. It's like Droplet is a perfect example of this, right? Because yes, that card is very expensive and it's a hurdle, and if you want to massively optimize your deck, it's a card you need to get. But I'm saying is that there are other options that you can play in this day and age. But something like Droplets was something that people did just actively play Chalice for, and some people even opted to play Chalice over Droplet in something like Sword Soul.
I feel like the concept of staples is kind of weird too. Gage, you're saying like, oh, if you invest in staples, it sucks, but you get it out of the way, and then they move in between decks, right? Like, is that even true?
Oh, yeah.
What would you consider a staple right now?
Okay, if somebody approached me, I think somebody did it the other day. They approached me and they asked, like, Gage, I'm playing Master Duel for the first time. What's the first deck I should do? And you know what I told him? I told him exactly what I told you guys. I said, it's not sexy, but you gotta buy staples. All, by the way, reprinted in Mega Pack 2022 and extremely affordable.
Right, but you're describing a series of cards that aren't always good. You know, there's a ton of metas where Triple Tack is the wrong option, where Lightning Storm is not a sideable card, where Evenly Matched goes in and out, where Ash is not even good.
No, yes, but I also feel like a lot of people get disgruntled at the price of things. Even let's say if it's $150 to build, give me an off-meta deck. I don't know, something like
Mathmech, I think,
Speedroid. Let me say
example.
Speedroid.
Mathmech is a good one.
Let me go with Speedroid, something that Timmy would play, right? I get all my cards for my Speedroid, maybe cost me $100, but I don't have the staples for it. You're not playing that Speedroid deck that you built even optimally, so you're not going to be able to get the most enjoyment out of it. So, and then you mentioned like those cards aren't playable all the time, the staples, right? Your Speedroid deck's not going to be playable for more than a couple of months. Now, are you going to continue to play that Speedroid after you get stomped on locals weekly? Or are you going to say, well, maybe I just need to make this deck better?
Well, now what you're describing is a scenario in which staples are not always playable, but you should invest them.
Yes.
Decks aren't always playable, but you should invest in them.
No. And
then, like, how does that support a conclusion that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is affordable? That's a ton of money.
Staples is the only thing, and that's what I'm trying to hammer out. Is after you get the staples out of the way, which is a hurdle for most people, everything is affordable.
So what happens if you pay $90 for the Ash playset before the most recent reprint, and then you get to this format and Ash isn't good?
Are you saying that as if Ash won't be good like 2 months from now?
How about
are we just acting like it's not one of the most ubiquitous cards in Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah, how about Lightning Storm?
Are we just acting like you won't play Lightning Storm 2 months? Are we acting like it's not one of the most ubiquitous cards in Yu-Gi-Oh? That's insane. It depends on how long you look to play the game. If I play the game for a year, maybe the staples won't be worth it, right? If I quit after a year, you're a quitter, first of all, but I also think like maybe like you really need to invest in the staples. And the word invest seems really rough, right? Because you're like, I'm putting $300 into this thing. But that's the only way you see success in the game, through any deck that you pick up.
So here's the thing, Gage. So the question at the end of the day is Yu-Gi-Oh! Affordable? Do you think that someone who has $300 to spend on their Yu-Gi-Oh! deck, and you're telling them, buy staples, buy staples, buy staples, they spend that $300 on staples, they don't have any more money, and they do not have a deck, they cannot play the game. Is Is that not an element of gatekeeping in itself?
If that was the only deck they played and they quit after that, that's their fault.
But they didn't play a deck.
If you
You're
spent
te-
the money,
you're telling
no.
them,
If you spent the money on staples, you played your deck and you realized I didn't like this deck. You can go pick up another deck, and it's going to cost you significantly cheaper than if you were starting from ground zero. And that's the case for every other deck you will pick up from then on.
All right, well, it's not gauged. There's no shot that it's gauged.
Shall we make some summarizing points?
Yeah, I think it makes some summarizing points here.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So the one thing that stuck with me this entire time, even though I've been like kind of hammering into Gauge, the one thing that I was like I thought was a little odd, is why Farfa used the example of the Dark World structure deck. I bet you don't even know what the new Dark World cards do. So for you to bring that up as an example, as saying, yeah, you can just take this thing to locals and have that be your, the deck that you play because you can just pick up 3 of the structure and it's cheap. I feel like that's like either a non-argument or you just trying to like find an argument where there isn't one.
Okay, so the point I was just making with that was that, yes, of course, in the format of the graveyard banishing with the bestials and tier limit and such, yeah, you're going to be absolutely destroyed. But again, I think the point is that we need to take a step back, and it's probably way too late for that, is to really establish what does it mean that the game is affordable right now? At which point can you come into the game and have a functional playable strategy? Because the question is Yu-Gi-Oh affordable right now? Well, I think the question should really be at what level is what we should really truly establish. There are plenty of viable strategies that are pretty good and work with very low rarity cards. You won't be winning YCSs, you won't be topping YCSs, absolutely, but you will have very good functional strategies that are very good compared to like 10 years ago. For the average player experience, the game is very affordable. At the higher competitive level, I completely agree with Joseph.
I feel like it's got to be Farfa. I feel like only Gage would have that take. Okay, here's what's doing me on Farfa. This man played BA for 15 years. Cherubini was a $17 card. He knows that bad decks have expensive cards. That's the only thing pushing me towards Farfa, because I think everyone's take is like weird and nuanced and defensible.
I think we all, with the exception of Gage. Yeah, what's up,
Kevin? The game's free for you, bro. You can't even play right now. So.
But that's the thing. No, but that's the argument. That's the argument that I made. I literally explained to you that yes, I cannot play on a competitive level, and with the cost of things right now, even if I was to play Flu, I would not be able to justify that amount. Those freaking advents are what, $45 a pop?
Well, here's the thing, Kevin. What are they gonna do if you stole a deck? Ban you?
Bro,
just walk off with a Rivalry of Warlords deck.
All
right. Do people have guesses? I mean, I have a guess. I'll
I have
down.
a guess.
I have a guess as
right.
well.
Everyone have it written?
2 seconds.
I've got it down. Right?
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
It was
My
me.
focus is
I got it! Let's go! Let's go!
I did put Kevin.
Did you all put me?
I put Farfa.
I put Distant Coder.
Oh
So
my
wait.
God.
So is your thought? Okay. So who do you more align with actually?
My opinion is almost exactly the same as Farfa's. So although I do think that the game is, not cheap, I don't think it's getting too expensive. On the contrary, I think it's currently headed in the right direction to be at the point where the majority of people would like it to be.
Well, I will see you all back here next week as we discuss, is Yu-Gi-Oh too gay these days?
Oh, okay. Good one.
Is it-
See us.